company called Rackspace Hosting. We have been in the hosting industry for 13 or 14 years now. I've been with the company for about 11. And what our company does is manage hosting as our roots, and then we move into, over the last few years, we've been moving into cloud computing quite heavily. And primarily, Rackspace is in the infrastructure as a service business. We do have a couple of offerings in software as a service as well. We're one of the leaders in hosting and cloud computing. We're certainly in the top handful of cloud providers in the world at this point. And what I want to talk to you today about is sort of my vision for how you get to the cloud over the next few years. I think a lot of companies are stuck in this position of not knowing what to do, so they're sort of caught in the headlights, so to speak, a deer in the headlights, and they don't know quite what to do. So hopefully I'll help you figure that out. So what I like to do initially with the presentation is sort of ground the room. What do we all have in common as IT folks, as business leaders, as people that are consuming and using cloud computing? We all have competition now that's really global in nature. We're in a global market. We have to have IT to remain competitive in that global market. It's more important than ever that IT be strong and efficient. We need those same systems to be very reliable and secure, so that's a big difficulty nowadays, especially as the world is global and as the threats become global in nature as well. Expense, there's certainly constraints around how much we spend on all of this equipment and services, especially due to the economic circumstances we find ourselves in. We have demands that are unrelenting, that comes from internally, externally, customers, whatnot. We've got to maintain the systems that we've got. Some of us go all the way back to the mainframe era with those systems. Some are further along, but we have to maintain those systems. And we have to continue to innovate and grow. Innovation is what is going to allow us to pull ahead of our competition, dig us out of this economic crisis. And what a lot of people are contending with is just sort of an unprecedented amount of change on the horizon. Change in all flavors, but the one that I sort of see in my industry is this idea of cloud computing. Cloud computing is everywhere. I go to conferences one a week, it feels like, and I talk about cloud computing, and conferences like this that are really not focused on it, that ends up becoming a big topic. It's hard to ignore it. The financial markets are looking at it as the next big thing, like the dot-com era, but it's everywhere, and it's becoming something that a lot of CIOs and CTOs and folks in IT have to figure out as they go. They have to sort of sort through the options, and that's a difficult task. Cloud is certainly viewed by many to be the future. This was a book written a few years ago by Nick Carr that he predicted that the shift from private data centers to the cloud would be similar to the way that we moved from private power generation to the public utility. It probably didn't happen quite as fast, but it's certainly in the works as we are sort of looking forward to the next generation of services. More and more will be served out of centralized large data centers. This is a very big change. I mentioned it's unprecedented. I would argue that that is certainly the case. As we moved from mainframes in the 70s and 80s into client server, that was a big shift that went on. Computing power went from centralized to distributed. What I would argue, though, is that moving to the cloud is an even bigger shift, because it isn't just IT having to contend with this. This is also a consumer challenge as well. Consumers are more and more taking down services from the cloud, and they're bringing those services to work. And so now IT has this sort of intersection of consumer IT, business IT, and all the things that are going on there, the complications that brings. So I think this is a bigger shift that's going on. This shift, this is my image of the perfect storm. I heard that this morning, and I was glad that came through. This is that perfect storm. You think of those storm chaser guys, and if you're ahead of the storm, you get a great view, and if you're just caught 1 or 2 seconds behind, you get you're toast, basically. And I think that same thing is sort of what's going on with CIOs. They're feeling like the need to get ahead of this cloud evolution process. And the smart ones are embracing it. They're giving their businesses guardrails around which they can sort of embrace the cloud without being too risky. I think that's really the job of the CIO today, is to really sort through that. Now, the power of the cloud. Think about what the cloud means to a lot of companies, and I think we heard this already a bit. The idea that you can turn on computing very quickly, very efficiently. you can reduce that computing, and with public cloud, you can actually turn the computing completely off. I like the fact that that came up in your presentation. This is exactly right. Public cloud, it means exactly that you can pay for services on demand, especially with software as a service. You can even pay for those with, on a user-by-user basis. If you go out and acquire a new company or you divest yourself of a company, you can turn those services completely off. And that's, it's almost irresistible. Companies are embracing this because they love the idea that they can provision these services instantaneously. It happens immediately. Developers love this because they've been hamstrung, or they feel like they've been hamstrung for many years with the lack of resources. They hate the fact that they have a project they want to work on and no servers or no storage to do that work. And now with cloud, they can self-provision. They can do it from an iPhone or an iPad or a portal, or better yet, an API. They can actually develop scripts and tools to develop their own resources or provision their own resources on demand. Now, so these are the sort of the summary slide why they love those services: utility billing, unlimited processing, elasticity to be able to scale up and down on demand, billing, self-service, all those things. And that really leads to companies being able to maximize revenue, reduce their costs. These are all important characteristics of an IT strategy, as mentioned before. So let's go back for a second and think about, this is not an error, this is actually my slide. So let's go back for a second to 10 years ago, 2001. So yeah, the guys back in the back are freaking out because they thought this was like an error. But I'll show you, it's really my slide, there we go. So 2001, this was the desktop. This was what it looked like, Windows XP. A lot of people, I heard, still run this, but I've since moved on. But I remember running this in 2001. I would install the operating system, and then IT would put Windows Explorer, Office, you get Outlook, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and then maybe a couple of other business-centric applications. So, you started with a handful of applications at best. Think about how far we've come, though, in 10 years. 10 years, what did we have back then? We had slow broadband. We had very little Wi-Fi. At Rackspace, in fact, we didn't even allow Wi-Fi for the first few years of that decade because we were scared it was going to leak out of the building and somebody was going to come and hijack our network or whatever. We had no iPhones, no smartphones, no tablets, no 4G. Do you remember the BlackBerry back then? It was like a pager. It looked like a big black and white pager. No Twitter, no Facebook, only a half a dozen programs, as I mentioned, on the PC. I call them programs here because we call them apps nowadays, but back then they were programs. They showed up on a disk and you put them in your computer. And the cloud was still part of a network diagram. I think everybody remembers a whiteboard with a cloud on it. That was what cloud was. But today, the cloud is everywhere. These are the first, what I would contend, the first true cloud devices. They really don't even work without the cloud. You can only play Angry Birds on the airplane. Nothing else works on these things without the cloud. I mean, they are your gateway or your interface to the cloud. My iPhone, this one I think is a stock photo and has 3 pages. Mine probably has 8 pages of apps. Think about where those 8 pages of apps came from. 8 times, I don't know, 12 or 15 apps. That's close to 100 applications from 100 different vendors. It isn't Microsoft and one other vendor. It's 100 different application providers. Think about how software used to show up. It showed up in a box. Somebody came out and installed it, and that's, 18 months later, there was a refresh cycle. Nowadays, it comes through a browser. It's not just a static application, it's a dynamic application, it's a social application. The provider, the software maker knows all kinds of information about me. They know who I am and where I work and who I work with and when I use their product and what workflow I use. All kinds of information is a constant stream of data that they're collecting so that they can make that application better every day. I'm giving a sales pitch here for Salesforce, but it's really anybody, any SaaS vendor has this information. It's not just Salesforce. So if you look out sort of in a utopian, visionary kind of way, you sort of think maybe someday we'll be all cloud, 100% cloud, all cloud enterprise. The truth is, if that really is the vision, it's a long way away. I mean, it's going to be a long way into the future. So we have this saying at Rackspace where cloud is for everyone, or maybe SaaS is better, maybe better said, SaaS is for everything, just not for everything. So everyone should be using it, just not for every task. So what do you do in the meantime if SaaS isn't ready for everything that you need to do and you still have to innovate, you still have to take care of business, you have to choose new providers as they come onto the scene? What you need is a bridge. You need a bridge to get from where you are to that utopian view of the future. I think that bridge comes in the form of public cloud, private cloud, a number of cloud services. Public cloud is something Rackspace has embraced over the last few years. We have a great service offering there. This is something that we've had to do to really be in the competitive market for cloud computing. There's other large companies on the competitive landscape that we've had to keep up with, and we've done a really good job. We're probably in second place in terms of public cloud. The thing that we've really differentiated Rackspace on over the years, though, is our customer service, our support, what we call fanatical support. So we've layered services over the top of our cloud, so it doesn't have to be do-it-yourself. It doesn't have to be DIY with cloud. It's not for rocket scientists only. It's for business leaders. It's for IT people that don't have the time to read up on this. You can have Rackspace manage your cloud. So we've dug into that in a big way and started to offer services in terms of managed cloud. Private cloud, we heard in the last presentation, private cloud is very much a real deal. A lot of the public cloud guys argue, is it real? Is there such a thing as a private cloud? Well, I argue there is. I mean, we're hosting private clouds for companies all over the world. We're building private clouds on premise for customers. We're doing quite a bit of work, and private cloud certainly is a real deal. Hybrid was mentioned in the last presentation. Rackspace is pulling together the best of our public and the best of our private and really combining those into a coherent architecture so companies can take advantage of the power of the scale-up, scale-down cloud, but also the privacy, security, and predictability of the private cloud. And then last but not least, what I call actually, this should have been something else, but anyway, I had changed the slide. I meant to put open cloud on this last one. Open cloud, they didn't get my updated slide, but then anyway, this would have been a big diagram of a project that Rackspace is working on called OpenStack. And so in terms of open cloud, we have this vision that instead of using proprietary technology to build clouds, we should use open technology. Just like we're using Linux, Rackspace has used Linux many years ago to build our hosting business, we think that the cloud should also be using open source technology. So my idea for you is to take away from this is the idea that if you're building a cloud, if you're thinking about building a cloud or using a cloud, look at open source technology. I think it's the future for clouds. It's going to be something that that helps us build standards, that helps us drive interoperability, that helps us do things on our own terms, and I think that's going to be really important. So with that, I think I shall leave you, and we'll do Q&A in a minute.